What is going on, YouTube? Welcome to another video. Now this video is for my assault class players. Now for me, 90% of the time I have been playing assault, maybe another 5% I've been touching a little bit of recon and also engineer. I love the fact that there is no meta weapon loadout. Now let me backtrack to say meta, right? When you think of meta, the way that I see meta is, hey, this is the only weapon that you can use in order to win 90% of your gunfights. If you use any other weapon, you're not going to win a lot of them. That's what I consider meta. Or even say a set of meta attachments saying, hey, only use this scope because this scope gives you the best clear picture to aim the best. Or hey, only use this underbarrel grip because all the other underbarrel grips suck. Each attachments genuinely have a different feel and different purpose for how you're trying to fight. And I think that's what I really enjoy about Battlefield, because it creates individuality for players. You're not just a whole bunch of bots using the same weapons, same attachments. But I want to talk about how you should use specific guns and attachments because it emphasizes its purpose for that situation. Whether you're playing CQB with a lot of enemy players up close, up in your face, whether you're playing maybe a medium-sized map where you're playing breakthrough or rush, where your distances on fighting players are usually close to mid, or for another example, if you play Conquest and you play another big map, say like Firestorm, and you don't necessarily want to play recon, you still want to play assault, and you still want to use the right AR for that situation. So here's what I've been seeing that's fairly common with a lot of players so far, is that a lot of people are just kind of sticking with their base weapons on ARs. They're mainly playing and using their M433. Either using the M433, maybe the B36 or the TR7, because I believe those are the weapons that you unlock just strictly from leveling up your career level. But when you do certain challenges, right, you unlock the Cord 6P, you unlock the NVO, you unlock the SOR, and when you unlock these specific weapons, you know, I think most players are just kind of sticking with the M433 because leveling these weapons are fairly slow. So they're probably still leveling it up. Even for me, I only have it at weapon level 40 because, you know, when you play the game normally, you don't do XP farming or XP glitches. And I think a lot of new Battlefield players have this mindset saying, okay, well, if I'm using the M433 and I want to keep leveling up the fastest, you know, based on the map that I'm going to use it on, I want to just change the attachments. That way it's good for close, that way it's good for mid, that way it's good for long range. And you know, in a game like Call of Duty, that would probably make sense because a lot of the attachments are meta across the board for all the weapons. Each weapon, it doesn't matter which weapon you use, as long as you use the same attachments for those specific scenarios, that's how it's going to be in COD. But Battlefield is a little bit different. So I'm going to show you three different ARs, one for extreme close range combat, you got one for long range combat, and two that could kind of be a bit of both close and mid range, maybe a little bit on the long range at the end, but not really its primary purpose. So let's start with your base one, right? M433. Honestly, looking at the stats on the M433 and how it shoots in regards to recoil, its only purpose, real purpose, is just for your close range fights. And again, I'd argue if you're not trying to max out the M433, try to get out of that gun as soon as possible, because outside of its close range engagements, there are other weapons that are very good for close range, and when you compare the two, what's the point of using the M433? Let's take a look at the stats real quick, right? A base M433 without any type of recoil attachments on here, you can already see that I only have a sight, I have a mag, and I have a regular standard barrel on it, no recoil attachments. Your hip fire is going to be 40 points, which is across the board for all the ARs. They're all the same. The precision sucks, which is 20 points. Would you know that precision is basically your weapon accuracy, right? Your bloom, how much the weapon blooms, how much that spread happens with these bullet groupings. You also got control, which is your general recoil control, and then mobility, which is also kind of the same across the board for all ARs. So here's what I mean about how this is literally only for your close range fights, because when you look, right, recoil is fairly easy to control for your first two targets, but the moment that you try to go to your medium and long distance ranges, look how bad the recoil is at its stock. The reason why I say it's bad, because check out these other weapon recoils that I'm about to show you. So for example, the SOR 556 right here, same thing. I only have a sight on it, I have a barrel, and I have an extended mag on here. Nothing in regards to recoil control, but check out the recoil on this. That is absolutely crazy. There is literally no recoil. I'm barely pulling down on the sticks to control this recoil. Another thing to note on this too is not only it has really good recoil control, but its precision is much more better than M433. M433 has 20 points on precision, while the SOR has 43. What that means is not only you have good recoil control for your long range shots, but you're also going to have great ADS accuracy, so you're going to get less bloom and your bullet grouping is going to be much tighter. You know what, actually scratch that. This not only has better recoil control, better precision, but also higher velocity. So for example, when I said Firestorm, right, and you're playing Conquest, you better not be running that M433 unless you're going to be fighting in the buildings the entire time. If you're running across the map and you're going to your medium and long range engagements going from point to point, I would recommend using the SOR over the M433 any day. The only reason I wouldn't use this as a primary focus for your close range combat with the SOR is the fire rate. The fire rate is very low and the damage is the same as the M433. So unless you're fighting enemies within 5 to 10 meters, sure, use the M433, but anything outside of that, SOR 556 in my opinion. Now the last gun I want to show you, and this is the one I'm currently leveling up, I have it at level 36, but I'm loving the fact about how versatile this gun is. Let's take a look at the stats, right? Hip fire 40%, precision 31, higher than the M433, and 57 for control, which is about 3 points less than the SOR 556. Actually, no, I stand corrected. Check this out. The SOR 556 is 51 on control, while the Cord 6P is 57. So it actually has better control with the SOR with its stock attachments on. So now testing the recoil on the firing range, this is with no recoil attachments whatsoever. Look at that. The only reason I say it wouldn't work for your long range engagements is because the precision points is a little bit lower. So I'm assuming that bullet bloom and bullet grouping is a little bit higher when it comes to your long range targets compared to the 556 SOR. But because of its fast fire rate, whether you run this as a medium range weapon or a close range weapon, it does way better and probably performs much better than the M433, despite it having less damage per shot. And also here's another example of what I mentioned earlier about how if you're just going to use the M433 for strictly close range combat, there's no point to use it because you have a gun like the TR7. The TR7 has very similar control and precision points compared to the M433, but it hits much more harder at 33 points per shot compared to the M433, which is 25. Let's go back to the SOR 556 recoil. Look at that. I have no recoil attachments on here, and look how smooth that aim is. Look how smooth the shots is on auto fire. I literally don't need to focus on trying to counter recoil whatsoever. Now I know what I mentioned earlier sounds a lot of common sense, right? Yeah, Noble, of course there's going to be a gun for every different situation, but for anybody that is trying to transition from Call of Duty or is just new to Battlefield, just know that you can't just take one weapon and have it fit for all situations unless you want to just do subpar for all situations. If you want to try to do the jack of all trades, you can, but you're not going to use it to its full potential for what it's used for. If you want to dominate on your long range fights in Firestorm, use the SOR 556. If you want to dominate your close range fights in, say, Siege of Cairo, I want you to use the TR7. If you're playing Empire State and you want to dominate in your close and mid-range fights, I want you to use the Cord P67. I hope this helps, guys, and I hope we're going to stop using the M433 for everything, and I want you guys to get kills. I want you guys to get wins, okay? But as always, if this video gave you any value whatsoever, please drop a like on the video. It helps it tremendously in the algorithm. And if you do enjoy the content overall, drop a sub to the channel. We'd love to see you here for the next video. But as always, stay pure, stay noble, and hashtag bring back honest gaming. Later, guys.